The movie opens with Max and her mother, Amanda, watching a scary movie trailer called Camp Bloodbath in a car. Max expresses her belief that her mother is better than the movie she's auditioning for, but Amanda feels trapped by the horror film. While driving, Max brings up their bills, but Amanda dismisses them and throws the bills out the window. They sing along to their favorite song on the radio, and Max accidentally spills coffee on Amanda's papers, leading to a distraction that causes them to be involved in a car accident. 3 years later, Max is preparing for her day and watching a home video of her and Amanda. Her best friend Gertie takes her to a diner where she's meeting a guy named Chris to study. At the diner, Chris tutors Max. Suddenly, Gertie's stepbrother Duncan invites Max to a screening of Camp Bloodbath put on by his theater club, offering to do Max's homework in exchange for her attendance. Max eventually agrees and goes with Gertie to the screening, with Chris joining them for support. After Gertie leaves, Chris awkwardly compliments Max's mom. Max mentions that it's the anniversary of Amanda's death, bringing down the mood. To lighten things up, Max jokingly remarks that she can at least see her mom again, even if it's in a movie where she's being chased by a killer. Suddenly, Chris's ex-girlfriend Vicky shows up, claiming it's a coincidence. Chris reveals that he posted his location on Twitter. Inside the theater, Vicky talks about being busy with college applications and using Adderall to cope. Chris offers to buy Max some popcorn and Vicky tags along. Gertie complains about Vicky's attitude and wonders how Max used to be friends with her. Before the movie starts, Duncan greets Max and expresses his happiness that she came. As they watch the movie, Max is happy to see her mom on the screen, playing the character Nancy. During the movie, a liquor bottle is accidentally dropped, spilling on the floor, and a fire starts when a cigarette ignites the spilled liquor, blocking the fire exits. Max discovers a door behind the movie screen and grabs a machete to tear through it. When she opens her eyes, she finds herself in a forest, and her friends start appearing one by one. They encounter a van and a woman asks for directions. Duncan recognizes her as Tina, one of the characters from Camp Bloodbath. The group is too stunned to speak, and Tina's friend Kurt drives away. They continue walking around, but remain lost. Suddenly, the van appears again, and Tina asks for directions like before. This time, Chris tells her to keep going straight. When Gertie suggests they might be going crazy, Duncan starts a timer on his watch. After another 92 minutes, Duncan counts down the seconds until the van returns. For the third time, Tina asks for directions, and Duncan claims they are camp counselors who can show them the way if they can get a ride. After driving for a while, Kurt announces that they have arrived. Nancy, who was asleep in the back seat, wakes up, and Max turns around slowly with tears in her eyes as she sees her mother again, but as Nancy and not Amanda. At the camp, Duncan reveals that they are inside the movie. Max asks how they can leave, and Duncan reminds them that they are in the year 1986 and technically don't exist yet. Just then, one of the counselors named Mimi goes into the woods, and Duncan says they are right on schedule. They remember that Mimi dies when she hooks up with a hiker, and Duncan explains that anyone who engages in sexual acts dies in this movie. The group searches for the keys to the van, and Max advises Nancy against sleeping with Kurt. As they continue their search for the keys without success, they start feeling hopeless. Suddenly, they spot Mimi from a distance, but Duncan warns them not to interfere with the movie. They hear a sound effect signaling Billy's appearance. Mimi and the hiker don't notice anything and continue their activities. Billy suddenly kills the hiker by snapping his neck and then grabs Mimi, strangling her. Mimi's body lands in front of the group, and Billy notices them. Chris yells for everyone to run, but Duncan stops them, realizing he is not part of the movie and won't be killed. He explains that they can't leave until the movie is over, and the final girl defeats Billy. In this movie, the final girl doesn't appear until the next reel. Duncan takes a selfie with Billy using his phone, but Billy walks away without harming him. Everyone laughs in relief, but suddenly, a machete is thrown and impales Duncan's side. The group panics and runs back to the camp out of fear. However, they find themselves trapped in a loop when they try to escape. They realize that the movie won't allow them to leave. In the main cabin, the counselors gather in a circle and sing. Gertie suggests warning the group about Billy, but Vicky thinks the counselors are too foolish. Suddenly, a car arrives and Paula, supposedly the final girl, steps out. Nancy tells everyone to prepare for a slumber party. Meanwhile, the group discusses their own strategies for survival, planning to stick with a counselor to increase their chances. However, relationships are strained and tensions rise. Later, Nancy prepares to sleep with Kurt, and Max interrupts, telling her to stop. Their moment is interrupted when Kurt leaves the cabin shirtless. Chris bursts into the cabin and searches for Max as they hear Billy's sound effects. Chris heads upstairs and they hear Gertie scream downstairs. The counselors gather inside to check on Gertie, who urges Max to warn them about Billy. Nancy explains Billy's backstory as the counselors take their seats. Ooze drips from the ceiling, confusing the group. They suddenly find themselves in the camp in 1957, and everything appears in black and white. Max realizes that they are experiencing a flashback to that time when Billy was constantly bullied. They witness the tragic events that led to Billy's transformation into a vengeful killer. After the flashback ends, the counselors notice blood splatters on Gertie's face from the flashback scene, terrifying them. Frightened, the counselors ran away. Max explains that they cannot leave until Billy is dead. However, Paula and Kurt panic and drive away. Duncan appears from among the trees, calling for help, but Paula accidentally runs him over and continues driving. Kurt crashes into a totem pole and dies when he is ejected through the windshield. The car eventually explodes, killing Paula. Upset, Vicky reveals to the remaining counselors that they are not real and are trapped in a movie where the final girl has already died. They continue explaining the situation to the others. Meanwhile, Tina questions why she has to cover up and is informed about her scripted destiny. Vicky suggests they need to nominate a new final girl and volunteers herself. However, Gertie and Chris argue that Vicky does not fit the criteria and Max is the only one who does. Chris proposes a plan to give Max Billy's machete, allowing her to kill him and escape. However, Max lacks confidence, so Nancy volunteers instead. Vicky informs Nancy that she cannot be the final girl because her character is scripted to die. Nancy becomes upset and walks away, so Max follows her. During their conversation, Max honestly tells Nancy that she will die. This revelation brings Nancy to tears as she expresses her dream of meeting someone and having a daughter, realizing that she will never get the chance to grow up. Back at the cabin, Chris takes charge of strategizing and suggests they lure Billy towards them. He presents his plan, which involves using Tina as bait. The group spends the entire day preparing materials, such as taking antlers from a deer mount, setting up a bear trap, collecting arrows, and sawing off a totem pole. Later, Vicky, Max, and Gertie sharpen wooden sticks together. Overwhelmed with emotions, Vicky apologizes for being mean to Gertie and confesses her feelings. She used to look up to Max for her bravery and encourage her to be brave once again. When Max expresses that Vicky doesn't have to die, Vicky responds that she is the mean girl in an 80s horror movie and her fate is predetermined. At the cabin, Vicky stops Tina from removing her oven mitts. As the girls leave, Tina notices Vicky's Adderall. Later, Max and Nancy prepare fire arrows, and Nancy asks about Max's parents. Max talks about her awesome mom, reminiscing about her qualities. After that, Nancy tells Max that she will miss her when everything is over and gives her a friendship bracelet. Max hopes that Nancy can come back to their world with her and doesn't have to die. They hug, but their moment is interrupted when the others call their attention to Tina, who is acting strangely because of Adderall. Chris suggests replanning, but Tina insists that she can handle it. When the time comes, they leave the cabin door open, while Nancy plays music for Tina's dance. Suddenly, Tina exposes herself, causing Billy to appear. Terrified, Tina runs away but gets caught in a trap. Billy manages to enter the cabin, but Chris closes the door and instructs Gertie to cut the rope, causing a totem pole to fall on Billy. However, Billy survives and stabs Blake. In a panic, Max tells everyone to run to the kitchen. While the others go upstairs, Nancy, Max, and Chris stay behind to shoot flaming arrows at Billy, but he remains unaffected. They escape through a window, leaving Vicky and Gertie behind. Vicky fails to execute their final trap, and Billy drops a bookcase on them. Vicky urges the others to leave while Gertie gets stabbed. As Vicky holds Gertie's hand, she pulls a cord one last time, causing a bucket of gasoline to fall on Billy, leading to a room explosion just as the survivors jump out in slow motion, as Max points out. Billy jumps out of the window, engulfed in flames, and the group continues running in slow motion. As the slow motion ends, Billy catches up to them, cornering them. Max tells Nancy to trigger the flashback again. Billy is taken into the flashback with them, where he is run over by kids, allowing Max to pick up his machete. During the flashback, they see past Billy, running to a rundown cabin that Nancy doesn't recognize. When present-day Billy returns, Max tells Nancy to recite the last line of the exposition, which takes them back to the creek. As they run away, Billy appears behind them. Chris tries to fight him but gets stabbed, and Nancy is captured. Max tries to chase after them, but Chris stops her, saying that Nancy is gone. Max hides Chris in a chapel and plans to find Nancy, but Chris reminds her that Nancy is supposed to die. Max refuses to give up and points out that Nancy has survived longer than in the original movie. Chris doesn't want to die alone, but Max assures him that nobody else will die. Max heads to the rundown cabin they saw in the flashback. As a door opens on its own, Max follows the trail and discovers the dead bodies of Mimi and the hiker. Meanwhile, Nancy is tied up but still alive. Max frees her, but Nancy warns her that Billy is nearby. Max tries to attack Billy, but is easily overpowered. Nancy helps her, but they both struggle against Billy's strength. Max gets stabbed, but Nancy takes the machete and hits Billy, knocking him down. Nancy escapes with Max, who takes her to the chapel, and Nancy decides to sacrifice herself to ensure that Max becomes the final girl. Max offers Nancy the role of the final girl, but Nancy knows she was never meant to be the main character and convinces Max that she's not afraid. Crying, Max reveals that Nancy is actually Amanda, her mother, who always wanted to be a movie star. Max doesn't want to leave without her, but Nancy tells her she must let her go. Nancy assures Max that she's a movie star before she goes outside. Nancy lures Billy toward her by undressing, and when he appears, she blows a final kiss to Max before being stabbed by Billy. With Nancy's death, Max gathers her strength and takes the machete to finish the movie. As the final girl, Max confronts Billy without hesitation, but he puts up a fight. Max pins him down to strike, but Billy blocks the machete and throws her away. Max charges back at him, avoiding his knife throw, and beheads him with the machete. As the credits roll in the sky, Max sees Chris, who survived his injuries, approaching her. They share a kiss, but then the screen starts shutting down. Max wakes up in a hospital bed next to Chris. They hear voices behind a curtain and discover Duncan, Vicky, and Gertie, who are all alive. Max wonders if it was all a dream, but Duncan assures her that it was real and shows his machete wound as proof. Max notices the friendship bracelet and fondly remembers her mother. Suddenly they hear the sound of Billy's arrival. They peek outside the room and see a doctor flirting with a nurse. Duncan realizes that they are in a sequel as Billy bursts through the window. Max bravely grabs an IV pole to face him, and the film concludes with that. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.